In Washington, I'm Howard K. Smith.
I'm Frank Reynolds in New York. These are tonight's headlines. President Nixon holds his first news conference of 1970. The White House says Mr. Nixon will announce a budget of $200 billion, $800 million for the next fiscal year, up by a relatively small $3 billion from the current budget. Labor Secretary Schultz says we cannot stand a nationwide rail strike and urges renewed negotiations, but a union leader says no. And North Vietnam's Lee Duc-Tho returns to Paris, says there will be no concessions under military pressure, but claims to be ready for serious negotiations. Howard?
Reports tonight from Darrell Griffin on a brawl between police and students in Manila, Keith McBee on the sudden speed-up of the Carswell hearings, Roger Peterson on how school integration succeeded in one Mississippi town, Jules Bergman on progress in organ transplants, Marlene Sanders on a telephone snafu in New York, and tonight's commentary on marijuana and the law. A half hour from now, President Nixon will hold his 9th televised news conference. It will be carried live after this report on this network. The topic reporters would most like to question the president about is his new budget for the fiscal year beginning in July of this year. The budget was distributed to the press yesterday, not to be published until it goes to Congress Monday. However, one newspaper went ahead and published it. Here's a report on what's in it by ABC's Sam Donaldson.
It is no surprise that a president who places so much emphasis on controlling inflation is proposing a balanced budget for the second year in a row. The spending total is pegged at $200.8 billion, $1.3 billion less than expected revenue. That's a $3 billion bigger budget than this year with a slightly smaller surplus. Still, the fiscal restraint on the economy is there. As usual, defense spending is the single biggest category, $73.6 billion, a cut of almost $6 billion from this year's request. But congressional Democrats are already pointing out that it's higher than the Congress actually appropriated this year. Income security, Social Security plus welfare, is up almost $5 billion at $50.4 billion. The $23.1 billion for health, education, and manpower programs includes an increase of $2 billion. The interest on the national debt must be paid, a sizable expenditure of $17.8 billion. The other spending areas have, with the exception of housing, been cut. Some drastically. Almost $1 billion less for agriculture, almost $500 million less for the space program. The president's economic advisors foresee a year when a sluggish inflationary economy turns into one of real non-inflationary growth, with a loosened money supply and, most important, no recession. If it happens that way before fall, one result could be big Republican gains in the congressional elections. Sam Donaldson, ABC News, Washington.
President Nixon's news conference, now about 25 minutes away, will be his first in the year 1970. For a report on the backlog of questions he may expect, here is ABC's White House correspondent Tom Jarrell.
There is no shortage of good questions to be put to the president tonight as he steps before these cameras here in the East Room. There is some question about how full his answers will be. Today's best news topic, for instance, is the president's economic report. Oddly enough, details of that report have leaked out. Everyone here in Washington knows the specifics of the report. But the president will not answer questions on the economic report because the official release time is not until 15 minutes after the news conference. Another area ripe for questioning is the State of the Union message. Like everyone else, reporters are anxious to have some meat put on the bare bones of the State of the Union proposals. For example, how will pollution be attacked? Since this subject and others will be detailed in lengthy, involved presidential messages to Congress in future weeks, the president will not be anxious to tip his hand tonight. There's also the nomination of Judge Carswell, but since this is pending before the Senate Judiciary Committee, detailed answers about Carswell's position on race might be properly sidestepped. Vietnam is always interesting copy, but since the president expressed himself last on Vietnam, not a lot has changed. You can never predict what one of these conferences might produce, but at the moment, one of the most wide-open subjects for discussion is the new European-looking palace-type uniforms supplied the White House police. Tom Jarrell, ABC News, in the East Room at the White House.
The General Electric strike, underway now for 96 days, appears headed for a settlement tonight. Negotiators from 2 of the 12 striking unions accepted the latest company offer today. The weekly paycheck would go up 25% under that agreement. There's an increasing likelihood the nation will be hit by a railroad strike over the weekend. Labor Secretary George Shultz appealed to both sides this afternoon for a 7-day cooling-off period, but the chief union negotiator turned him down. Shultz wants to meet with leaders from both sides on Monday because, in his words, the nation cannot stand a railroad shutdown. We'll be back with more news in a moment.
Working your way to the top can be fatal. Ask anyone who's ever made it to the top of the FBI's most wanted list, if you can.
They're trying to kill me! I'm with FBI.
1 to all units. Intercept.
Today, the enemy is a desperate killer run to earth. Tomorrow, the best brains of the international underworld will strike. The man who picks up that briefcase is the one I want killed. And the men of the FBI will counter-strike.
If they find out about you, it's only one more step to me.
FBI, Wilson, hold it right there.
These are their stories. The agents of the FBI, the working men of the greatest crime-fighting organization in the world.
Le Duc Tho, a member of North Vietnam's Politburo and the man in charge of Hanoi's delegation to the peace talks, returned to Paris after an absence of 6 months today. There has been speculation that perhaps he might bring with him a change in policy, but there was no indication of that today. Tho said his government is ready for serious negotiations, but he also said Hanoi will make no concessions to American pressure, and he accused President Nixon of trying to prolong the war. A bomb, presumably planted by the Viet Cong, exploded in a Saigon movie theater today. A number of civilians were hurt, but there were no fatalities. 9 days ago, the Viet Cong set off a bomb in another Saigon theater. In Manila, thousands of students and other demonstrators battled with police and soldiers outside the presidential palace. At least 4 demonstrators have been killed. The violence broke out just after darkness. Here is a report from ABC's Darrell Griffin in Manila.
Some 10,000 students and demonstrators gathered outside Malacayan Palace, the presidential residence, to protest against alleged police brutality, repression, and what they call police state tactics. They defied troops, police, and firemen throughout the night in the most violent rioting ever to rock this young republic. At one point, they seized a burning fire truck and tried, but failed, to storm the palace gates. President Ferdinand Marcos and his family remained inside. Riot police tried tear gas and water from fire hose in their efforts to dispel the demonstrators. When they failed, the police fired rifles over the heads of the demonstrators, and the demonstrators fired back with sticks, rocks, and homemade bombs. At least 5 Molotov cocktail explosions were counted during the evening. One set fire to the palace clinic. Burning vehicles threatened several buildings near the palace. At latest count, more than 200 demonstrators have been arrested. Many were not students, we are told, but rather came from the slum areas of Manila. Malacayan is quiet now. Heavily armed troops guard the palace inside and outside the gates. The authorities seem to have the situation under control. But many here feel the control will not last, and a reconfrontation could come as early as tomorrow. This is Darrell Griffin, ABC News, Manila.
Yesterday, Syria and Israel exchanged sonic booms as jets from each country broke the sound barrier over cities in the other. Today, however, there was real fighting on the ground. The Syrians attacked an Israeli position in the Golan Heights. The Israeli Air Force attacked Egyptian positions in the Suez Canal zone. The Egyptians say their jets intercepted the Israeli planes and drove them off. The Israelis denied that any Egyptian planes rose to meet them. We'll be back with more news in a moment.
Moody.
Moody. M-O-O-D-Y. Moody. I'm the golfer who won the U.S. Open.
Oh, that's the guy. What's the U.S. Open? Don't you play golf? I play a little pinochle.
At this time, I'd like for you to meet one of America's really great heroes. Arnie, come on out here.
Must be a golfer. Oh. Hang on.
This is Arnie Ferber.
Oh, it's Ernie Derber.
Ferber. F-E-R-B-E-R. Ferber. Take it easy, Arnie.
Yeah, cool it, Arnie. He looks nervous.
Arnie's the guy who sold me a Metropolitan life insurance policy. He's making certain that guys like me stay heroes to their families by providing proper protection. Take it from someone nobody knows.
Arnie knows him.
You just never know. Isn't that right, Arnie?
That's right. All of them. I know you. I'll just with my...
Race relations play an important role in several stories this evening. First, the nomination of Judge Harold Carswell to the Supreme Court. His attitude on civil rights has been the prime issue. It now appears his nomination is moving rapidly closer to approval. Details from ABC's Keith McBee on Capitol Hill.
The Senate Judiciary Committee has been hearing testimony here, some of it stormy, for 2 weeks. Today, the committee announced it would listen to just 3 more civil rights opponents of Judge Carswell's on Monday, then go behind closed doors with approval expected a day or so later. Senator James Eastland of Mississippi, the chairman of Judiciary, expressed his confidence.
I can see no problem at all. He's going to get a big vote in the committee, and he's going to get a big vote on the floor.
How do you answer certain civil rights advocates who say that this committee hearing has been a ramrod job?
Well, it hasn't been a ramrod job. We're hearing every witness who's asked to testify, either for him or against him. We cannot manufacture witnesses.
The full Senate vote that would place Judge Carswell on the Supreme Bench would also seem to be in his favor. 15 to 20 liberals may oppose. But Senator Hugh Scott, who is nothing if not a realist, said today the opposition may collapse altogether. Keith McBee, ABC News, Capitol Hill.
Across the South, segregated schools in many communities closed down this afternoon for the last time. If they meet the Supreme Court's deadline, they will reopen Monday on an integrated basis. In a last-minute appeal for delay, Florida's Governor Claude Kirk today asked the court to define its phrase, unitary school system. The governor said it's impossible for him to go ahead with integration until that term is defined. In Atlanta, a civil rights leader today urged the U.S. Attorney General to arrest Governor Lester Maddox for trying to impede integration in that state. The Reverend Joseph Boone also called on the state legislature to start impeachment proceedings against the governor immediately. In Pass Christian, Mississippi, schools were desegregated last fall. Even though a hurricane hit the community and destroyed all but 2 school buildings, integration caused few problems with either the youngsters or the parents. ABC's Roger Peterson has a report.
Even tiny blades of grass were uprooted when Hurricane Camille ripped through Pass Christian last August. Since that day, there have been other uprootings here, uprootings of tradition. Schools in Pass Christian desegregated voluntarily as planned in September, despite the hurricane which destroyed 2 schools and forced most students into what was just to be the high school. Unlike many Mississippi towns, desegregation is working here, mainly through the efforts of Superintendent Frank Drummond, who picked up the pieces after Camille.
We have put a lot of work and emphasis for about 1 or 1.5 years prior to integration here in Pass Christian, and we feel like we prepared the students and the parents and the teachers and the taxpayers for a long time prior to the integration, and they were prepared for it well in advance.
Diane Matkin, a senior, serves as co-president of the student body.
Well, it's unspoken, it's just understood. It's all in us, and we know it, and we know that we have to do it, and in order for it to be done, that we've got to do it. So we're all trying real hard, and it's working out real nice, I think.
Another senior, Mark Martin, is the other co-president. He's going to school with whites for the first time in his life.
Since the hurricane, like everyone been doing pretty good, because after the hurricane hit, no one didn't have a chance. Everybody had to be together in order to get along. And ever since the hurricane, like everything been going on pretty good.
Hurricane Camille may have united Pass Christian and laid the groundwork for smooth integration. But this is not the only area in Mississippi where integration is working quietly. However, it's the only town where school officials feel secure enough to be willing to let their story be told. Other officials say they're afraid even good publicity might generate trouble from inside or outside their communities. The officials, of course, are also sensitive to state leaders, many of whom still maintain integration just won't work here in Mississippi. And the towns where it does
are living contradictions to a fallacy that's been the cornerstone of many an election campaign. Roger Peterson, ABC News, Pass Christian, Mississippi.
7 Black Panthers were indicted in Chicago late this afternoon on charges ranging from attempted murder to armed violence. All 7 are accused of participating in a shootout with the police on December the 4th. The question of civil rights today caused the Defense Department to reassess its $7 billion contract with McDonnell Douglas Aircraft for the F-15 fighter plane. To win the contract, the company had to comply with equal opportunity standards, but its hiring policies were never fully reviewed. The Secretary of the Air Force flew to St. Louis this afternoon to discuss the matter with the company. We'll be back with more news in a moment.
When you spend your weekends the way this guy does, you've got to keep in shape. Charlie doesn't go into hibernation the day they pack the goalposts away. He stays where the action is. He spends his Saturdays bowling with the pros, skiing, skating. Sunday is his day for basketball and a little hunting or fishing trip.
See you Monday, Charlie.
Have a nice weekend, Alice.
I had to marry a sports nut.
Every weekend, Charlie really knocks himself out over sports.
This is Chris Schenkel, inviting you to another weekend of great sports action with the Pro Bowlers Tour, ABC's Wide World of Sports, the NBA Game of the Week, and American Sportsman. Now let's get back to the action of it.
That's it, get that ball.
Sure, Charlie's a sports nut, but aren't we all? And isn't ABC the only place for a sports nut to be every weekend?
Oh, all right, we got it there, let's go.
Orange Plus takes you back 25 years, 1945. Fresh orange juice, sweet and loaded with pulp. 1947, frozen orange juice phase 1. It was convenient. 1965, frozen orange juice phase 2. Better, not perfect. 1970, frozen orange plus. It tastes, smells, and has pulp like fresh orange juice because it is half orange juice, half flavor enhancer. Bird's Eye's Orange Plus. Science takes a giant step backward.
You're about to see an 8-year-old boy open a can of dog food with his bare hands. It's Gaines Prime in a cellophane can. It's just the same as regular canned, tender and beefy, with vitamins, minerals, vegetables, meat byproducts, and real meat. Only ours can come in cellophane cans. Same for variety pack. Easy, meaty Prime in the cellophane cans.
Some encouraging news tonight from the battlefront called Man and His Environment. The National Cancer Institute announced that tests are now underway on a new drug for use against brain tumors. 20 cases with advanced tumors showed signs of improvement with dramatic results in isolated cases. The most dramatic medical advance of the decade has been the heart transplant. But each of those operations has been beset with problems of rejection, the body's refusal to accept the new heart. Now there's important progress in that field as ABC's science editor Jules Bergman reports from Los Angeles.
This is the tissue typing lab at UCLA Medical Center, which has pioneered in unraveling the mysteries of the body that make each human being different and unique. The secret in transplant is to find humans enough alike so that one body will accept organs from another. It all begins here when the surgeon sends in blood samples from potential donors and recipients. Blood is a tissue itself, and so it's called tissue typing. How much alike are the tissues from donor and recipient? Are they similar enough so that the defense mechanisms in the recipient's body won't be triggered and reject the foreign organs? The key to tissue typing and successful transplants are the blood's white cells, the lymphocytes. They're isolated here from the blood samples. Then the white cells are injected into test trays loaded with antibodies, the body's fighters against foreign invaders. They're incubated to see how well the cells get along. Under the microscope, technicians study how the cells have reacted together and count how many have survived to determine how good a match the tissues are. It's all analyzed by computers, and the surgeon gets back a report that tells him whether the transplant has any chance of working. These time-lapse films, magnified hundreds of times, show us what happens all too often. The white cells are attacked by the antibodies defending the body. This is a classic example of a bad tissue match. The transplant would have failed. Using chemicals and radiation, surgeons have managed to stop this defense action. But the chemicals used also paralyze the body's ability to fight off infection, which kills many transplant patients in the end. In a perfect tissue match, the transplant would have worked. The patient would have lived. What we've seen here in a few seconds actually took several hours. The faster, more accurate tissue typing just developed offers new hope. But the big breakthrough, finding a way to overcome the body's defenses, still lies in the future. Until then, all transplants will be hazardous and uncertain. This is Jules Bergman, ABC News, at UCLA Medical Center, Los Angeles.
We'll have more news in a moment.
Why would three hip kids want to become working cops? Why do they do it? To help. No uniforms, no badges, but they're still cops.
Oh, you're crazy. What are you doing?
They've been there, then back again. They came back with a message for other kids. Don't go.
Your horse, book him. We're not talking about hoods and pushes. We're talking about college students, Captain.
Since when does a building care who...
College students. Protest marches. Not rioters.
Look, Rakosi doesn't train his men to hate or kill. He trains them to keep order, period.
Watch for them. Three young cops doing their thing, their way. This is the Mod Squad.
Tuesday night at 7:30, 6:30 Central Time, here on ABC.
In other news today, Billy Saul Estes received some bad news. He'll have to stay in prison after serving 5 years of his 15-year term for fraudulent credit dealings. His bid for parole was denied this morning by the U.S. Parole Board without explanation. He can apply for his freedom again in December 1971. Here's a report from Indianapolis that ought to cheer everybody who has ever lost a nickel in a vending machine. It's about 40-year-old Robert Goins, who became fed up with losing money in a soft drink machine at the gas station where he works. So he shot it. That's right, he just pulled out a gun and shot the machine. The judge found him guilty of drawing a deadly weapon, but suspended most of the sentence. And then there is Fred Murphy of New York, who became so fed up with the telephone company that he took out an ad in this morning's New York Times and offered a $50 reward to the telephone company or any of its mechanics who are able to repair his two phones. Mr. Murphy is not the only one having troubles with the telephones in New York. ABC's Marlene Sanders has this report.
There are 92,000 coin telephone booths in New York City, 6,000 of them on the streets. But if you were to ask the average New Yorker whether outdoor phones are operating properly, you'd come up with replies like these.
Payphone, regular phone, the telephone company is lousy, and then they want you to pay your bill on time, but they give you lousy service and take weeks to come and repair your phone.
I got one nickel back, and the other nickel went in.
Is this unusual? Of course.
No, it's the usual.
The service is no good.
I was going to one booth to the other on 5th Avenue, mind you. Couldn't get anything.
But the New York Telephone Company claims most of its coin phones are in perfect working order. However, they admit that 25% don't work, mostly because of vandalism and theft. Payphones, incidentally, are the least profitable part of the phone company's business. In sections where the phones can't be kept working right, the phone company has been known to pull them off the street entirely. Officials were unable to tell us exactly how many outdoor payphones are out of order on any given day, but we made our own survey that involved looking for a phone that worked. In this case, we walked 20 blocks and found only one working telephone. The same problem exists in many sections of the city. The New York State Public Service Commission says complaints about general phone service will peak again this month at about 2,500.
The number you have reached is not in service at this time.
This is Marlene Sanders, ABC News, looking for a working phone in Manhattan.
Well, don't call us. We'll call you, Marlene. We'll be back in a moment.
You'll enjoy Friday nights more on ABC. The Flying Nun. Brady Bunch.
Oh, my, that's sick of him.
The Ghost and Mrs. Muir.
Captain, what's that gleam in your eye? What have you got in your mind?
The Flying Nun, The Brady Bunch, and The Ghost and Mrs. Muir. Friday night on ABC. The laughs are on us.
Congress this week passed a far-reaching bill dealing with the illegal drug traffic and penalties for taking drugs. No one is sure it'll serve as a remedy because we don't even understand the ailment. Frank has a comment. Frank?
Hardly a day goes by anymore without the disclosure that a son of someone in public life has been arrested on drug charges. The boy and his parents become, I suppose, legitimate subjects for news stories. They are duly written up in the newspapers. Their pictures and statements are carried on the television. All this may give some pleasure to people who like to see prominent men embarrassed by the alleged misdeeds of their children. It hardly seems fair to the boy involved, who, in addition to his own unpleasant predicament, must bear the added burden of knowing he has brought unfavorable publicity to his father. The teenage son of a governor of an eastern state was picked up a while ago on charges of possessing marijuana. The teenage son of a candidate for governor of another state was seized while in possession of a hashish pipe and a few pills. Perhaps their arrest and all the publicity they and their families have received may contribute to an increased awareness of just how pervasive the use of marijuana has become at all levels of social position and family wealth. And therefore, perhaps a recognition that pot today is really the bootleg beer of Prohibition days. The laws against it, like those outlawing the illegal booze of the 20s, do not in any way discourage its consumption. The Senate this week approved a bill drastically lowering the penalties for possession of marijuana. That is progress of a sort, but it still treats the young man caught with the stuff as a criminal. He doesn't think he is one, because in the majority of cases he is merely doing what so many others are doing. He can hardly be blamed for feeling that his real crime is one of stupidity, allowing himself to be caught. Whether this attitude will either discourage the use of marijuana or instill respect for the law is very much open to question. Howard?
Thank you, Frank. That's tonight's news and a comment. I'm Howard K. Smith. Good night.